One of the most important questions every long-term traveler has to answer is, how are we going to make our phones work while we're traveling abroad? Those glory days of Google Fi just working everywhere in the world are largely behind us. And so we have to figure out how we're going to get our data in each country that we visit. So in today's video, we're going to go through the relative pros and cons of SIM cards versus eSIMs so that you can make the best decision of which option is going to work best for you. And if you stick around to the end of the video, I'm going to go through the 2 things you need to double check on your phone, probably before you even leave on your trip. So we're going to start with choice of plan and provider. Now, SIM cards have been around a long time, and so they're naturally going to provide you with a lot of different options. In any specific country, there's going to be multiple cell phone companies that are going to offer service, and you just have to pick which company that you want to go to, and then each company is probably going to have multiple plans for you to choose from, depending on how much data you need. If you need minutes for phone calls, whatever it is, you're going to be able to figure out which plan is going to work best for you. On the other hand, eSIMs, generally speaking, they're going to be a worldwide company that then negotiates with local providers to provide that service. So you might not even know which local provider it is that's giving you the service because you're buying it through the third party. And there's just not going to be as many options. Now, these options are growing, and I think eventually we'll probably see these even out. But at current time, you're definitely going to have more option if you go with a physical SIM card. The next thing we're going to look at, and I think this is going to be an important one for a lot of us, is just the convenience of getting the service turned on in the first place. So the issue with physical SIM cards is that it's a physical SIM card that you're going to need to go buy. So you're going to have to go to a provider store. Sometimes you can get them at convenience stores like a 7-Eleven or an OXXO. But you're going to have to go somewhere and buy the card so that you can actually put it into your phone. If you're flying into an airport, this sometimes is pretty easy because they almost always sell them in the airport. There's going to be a kiosk or a store that has them. However, sometimes those cards that you can get at the airport tend to be a little overpriced and undervalued. So if you can make it into town and go to an actual store, you're probably going to get both a cheaper deal and a better plan. eSIMs, on the other hand, are just more convenient. I use a service called Airalo, and one of the things I really like about them is that I can purchase the plan before I even get to the country. And then, once I land in the airport and my phone connects to that cell tower, that's when the eSIM activates and actually turns on and starts working. It's just very easy. So if your plan is to get an Uber from the airport, the eSIM kind of just works really nicely, so you don't have to worry about it, kind of make those travel days
much easier to handle.
For me, I'm definitely putting the check mark on eSIM. I just think it's a lot more convenient. The next thing we're going to look at is the ease of installation. Now, when it comes down to it, this is really going to depend on which provider that you choose because they all have their own little quirks. However, I think in general, we can talk about this. With a SIM card, generally you just have to put the card into your phone and then you're going to have to set up your plan. Usually this is done online. I know when I did this in Malaysia, I went to the store, they sold me the card, I put it in, and then they took me over to this kiosk where I had to go and I had to pick which plan that I wanted. I had to pay for it. And that took about, I don't know, I was probably in the store about a half hour working with them to, explain what I wanted and to get it. On the other hand, when I went to Vietnam, I stopped at a little kiosk in the airport. I handed them my phone and my credit card. They handed them both back to me. It took literally a minute. The longest thing it took them was to run my credit card. It was very fast and it just worked. So every provider is going to be a little bit different. You're just going to have to figure out what their plan is, but generally it's pretty straightforward. Now, when it comes to eSIM, the process is, again, pretty straightforward. You just download the SIM onto your phone, and then the provider is going to give you some instructions of how you go through the settings to make sure that it is correctly turned on. Now, one thing, and this is where I'm going to take some points away from the eSIM, is that when you're setting it up, it is very important that you have very reliable Wi-Fi, right? It is a program that you're downloading, and if your connection gets interrupted, it could corrupt the whole program. Now, I know with Airalo, they do state in their terms that if the program becomes corrupted, it's just not going to work, and you're going to have to buy another plan to go forward from there. So that's never happened to me. It has always worked very simply. I've not even talked to anyone that has happened to. But just because there is that possibility, instead of a physical thing, it is just over the internet, I'm going to take the points away and I'm going to give this one to the physical SIM card. We release a new video every Sunday, so if you are enjoying this content, this is your chance to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming next. So the next thing we're going to talk about is your data plan and how much data do you get? So let me show you here with an eSIM. We're going to go, this is the Airalo website, and we're just going to put in, let's say I'm heading to Portugal. And once we look at Portugal, we're going to look at their country plans, and you can see here. So these are divided up both by data and the number of days. So you can see the validity, 7 days, 15 days, 30 days. Generally for me, I'm looking at those 30-day programs. So for here, for 30 days, I can get 3 gigs of data for $9.50. And then if you come down, you can see that goes up to 5 gigs, 10 gigs, up to 20 gigs. And then you're just paying for the amount of data that you actually want. And because this is in Europe, there's actually a pretty good selection of plans there for you to choose from, depending on how much data that you need. Just know that in other regions, when I was in Asia or Central and South America, often those plans top out at like 3 gigs for the 30 days. So if that's enough for you, it always was for me. It might not be a problem, but if you are a heavy data user, just know if you run through your plan, you're going to have to top it up, buy a new plan to keep going with those eSIMs. Now, on the other hand, you've got your SIM cards, and generally speaking, SIM cards are just going to offer you a lot more data for your buck. I know when I was in Malaysia, my plan had unlimited data, and that was really convenient. I'm not even a really high data user, so I didn't need it, but it was just nice knowing I didn't have to track it or think about it or worry about it because it was just unlimited. Sometimes the plans will offer unlimited social media data. So when you're on, Instagram or Facebook, that data that you're downloading doesn't count against your overall total. Just depends. You have to know how you use your data, how you use your phone, and then you can pick the plan that is going to work best for you. Overall, I think these are fairly comparable depending on where you are, but in most places, you're going to get more data with that physical SIM card, so we're going to give it to them for the win. Next up is going to be cost of the plan that you purchase. Now, just to give you an example, I just spent 2 months in Guatemala. For the first month, I had an eSIM because we were flying in. I needed to get an Uber. I just wanted the convenience of having it working as soon as we got there. But after we were there for a month, I wandered into a mall and there was a Claro store, and I went in and I bought a physical SIM card to use for my second month. So for that first month, I paid $21 for a 30-day plan that came with 3 gigs of data. But then when I got my SIM card, I paid $13.50, got 10 gigs of data, and it came with a local phone number. So it was definitely a much better deal at a much better price. Again, it's going to depend on these other factors of which one is going to work best for you. But as far as cost goes, SIM card is almost always going to win for being a cheaper option. Another question to ask yourself is, are you going to need a local phone number? Now, I'm not someone who makes a lot of calls. This isn't usually very important to me. However, I have been in situations where like a tour guide or a taxi driver want to call you. And if all you have is an international phone number, they are perhaps unlikely to want to call that number. But if you have a local SIM card with a local number, then they're going to be able to call you and, work out whatever you need to work out. So SIM cards, the actual physical card, is often going to come with that local phone number, and that can be kind of a nice perk in those situations. Whereas eSIMs generally do not. You might be able to find some providers where they're offered in certain countries, but generally speaking, they just don't come with that local phone number, so you're not even going to have that option. So this one definitely goes to SIM card. Another thing to consider is range of use. Now, with either physical SIM cards or eSIMs, generally speaking, you're going to get a country-specific plan. So you go to Thailand, you're getting a Thailand plan. You move to Malaysia, you have to get a different Malaysian plan. Where eSIMs have an advantage is that they sometimes will offer regional plans where it'll work in Southeast Asia or Central America, and they'll work in most of the countries in that region. You have to check the fine print, but it will work over over multiple countries. They even have global plans that will work all around the world. Just know that the bigger region you're having covered, the more expensive they're going to be. For me, I tend to just get country specific because I'm staying long enough. It just makes sense for my travels, but it might be an option that works for you. I suppose there may be SIM cards you can get that are regional, probably most likely in Europe. But I think eSIMs have the advantage here if you're looking for those larger region plans. A category I wanted to include here is security. Now, this is not something I am an expert in, and knock on wood, I have never had my phone stolen and I've never had to deal with this personally. However, there is some security that comes with having an eSIM. Now, with a SIM card, if someone steals your phone, all they have to do is take the SIM card out, and now you can't use the tracking features to track your phone anymore. It's pretty much lost to you. But with an eSIM, many phones today, I know the Samsung phones, if your phone is in lock mode, they can't just turn the phone off. So they're going to have to hack your phone to get into it to remove the eSIM. So when they take it, you're probably going to have a bigger window where that eSIM is still active and you might be able to track it down. So if that is something that is important to you, I thought that was something that was worth mentioning. So looking at the final scorecard, I think it is not that surprising that physical SIM cards are still able to come out ahead. This technology has just been around a lot longer, so of course they are able to offer more services at a more affordable price. The question you have to answer is which of these services are actually important to you, or is just that convenience of the eSIM worth paying the extra money for? So over the past year, we have used a combination of both physical SIM cards and eSIMs, just depending on which country we were in and which made the most sense. We used the physical SIM cards in 3 countries, in Malaysia, Vietnam, and Guatemala. And then we did get eSIMs in Australia, French Polynesia, Ecuador, Guatemala, and here in Mexico. If you decide to use an eSIM and are looking for a company to use, like I said, we've been using Airalo for the past year. They came very highly recommended to us by other travelers, so I would definitely have no problem recommending them. I actually have a discount code if you are interested. If you are a new user and use this code when you check out, you will get $3 off your first purchase. We also get a couple dollars back. So if you do decide to do that, thank you for supporting this channel. But I did promise to talk about 2 things you're going to want to check on your phone probably before you even leave on your trip. The first one is to make sure your phone is compatible with the technology that you want to use. Now, most of the modern phones that are getting released today are compatible with eSIM technology, but if you have an older phone or an off-brand phone, you're definitely going to want to double check before you purchase an eSIM. I will put a link in the description below this video to an article on Airalo, or you can Google something else that'll give you the instructions for, if you have an iPhone or an Android, of how to get into your settings and just double check that your phone is compatible with the technology at all. Definitely want to check that before you buy something. But on the other hand, if you have a newer iPhone, they have gotten rid of, at least in the United States, they have gotten rid of that physical SIM card slot. So if you have an iPhone 14 or 15 that you purchased in the United States, you're not going to be able to use a physical SIM card because there's just nowhere to put it. So you're going to want to make sure you know if your phone is compatible with the technology you want to use. The second thing you're going to want to check is your phone unlocked? If you are still under contract to your provider back home, it is unlikely your phone is going to work at all with either a physical SIM card or an eSIM. So before you travel, you want to make sure either you buy a new phone that is unlocked, or you want to call your provider and see what you have to do to get out of your contract to get that phone unlocked. Some of them might unlock it for you. There might be a fee associated with that, especially if you've just upgraded to a new phone. You might have to buy out the contract. But if you're intending on using a SIM card while you are traveling, make sure your phone is unlocked. So hopefully this gives you the information you need to be able to make that decision about which one of these options is going to be best for you. And I would love to hear about it in the comments below, whether you are Team SIM card or Team eSIM, or whether you're like me and are going to use either one depending on which is going to meet your needs in any specific country.